put it this way. When he went to Paris in 1923, and a lot of people did, Aaron Copland, Samuel Barber, a lot of other composers went to Paris. But they went to study. Villa-Lobos went to show what he could do. Villa-Lobos, because of his time in Paris and meeting people like Prokofiev, Andrei Segovia, Nicor Zabaleta, Aldo Parisot, and of course, Arthur Rubinstein, one of the most important pianists of the 20th century, who actually premiered many of Villa-Lobos' pieces for piano. He became sought after because he was not the standard European guy. He was exotic. He was interesting. He combined classical and popular music in his compositions, and he was sought after by the great orchestras of the world. He conducted the Chicago Symphony, New York Philharmonic, Los Angeles Philharmonic, major orchestras in Europe, Montevideo, Buenos Aires, and he became very sought after as an interpreter of other people's music and of his own music. So he became the voice, the face of Brazilian music for at least a generation, if not more. And his music was so popular, it influenced generations of composers in Brazil and in Latin American music, and had a great influence on many others as well. So his citizenship of the world, for 35 years, he was traveling constantly, conducting, having his music performed by some of the greats, became the best known Latin American composer, and I would argue the most important Latin American composer. There's a story of the great Arthur Rubinstein, one of the greatest pianists of the 20th century. Villa-Lobos wrote a really elaborate piece for him called Rude Poema. It's one of the hardest pieces for piano ever. It's like 30 minutes long. And you need 20 fingers to play this piece. And Rubinstein complained, oh, it can't be done. And Villa-Lobos again said, musically, it's possible. What I did is possible. What you do is your problem. And Rubinstein did the world premiere, and he ended up recording it at least once, if not twice, and it became one of his best known pieces. And now it's a piece that shows off how good you are. So the legend is that Villa-Lobos was on a trip up the Amazon in a little boat and had a shipwreck and was stranded. He was surrounded by cannibals who tied him to the stake and were going to eat him. But he convinced them to let him play the cello for them. And he did. And the story goes that they loved it so much that they didn't eat him and that they let him go. Now, this is one of many stories that Villa-Lobos told about his trip throughout Brazil. He would tell stories in order to create interest in his music. Villa-Lobos had a great respect for Bach. In fact, he claims that he was the first guitarist to have transcribed the famous Chaconne in D minor for the guitar. Andrei Segovia, his good friend, later recorded it and became famous for it. But he always had a close relationship with Bach. He played the cello suites. He studied a lot of the piano music, a lot of the counterpoint. He was autodidactic. He didn't study with anybody. He learned to compose on his own, mostly. And Bach was a great influence. In the 20s, 30s, and 40s, he really embraced the idea of Bach when he started looking at this series of pieces that he called the Bachianas Brasileiras, the Brazilian Bach-like pieces. He even gave each of the movements two titles, one European, something like Allegro or Adagio, and another one Brazilian, like Martelo, Ponteio, Dança, combining Brazilian popular elements and Bach into these beautiful classical compositions. There are 9 of them for a variety of different instruments. What you guys are hearing is the Bachianas No. 5, perhaps his most famous piece and one of his most important. He also invented the BYOB party because he didn't have any money. He would invite people to his house to play music, and he said, oh, if you're coming, why don't you bring a couple of kilos of grapes? And the next person, why don't you bring a couple of bottles of wine? And the next person, why don't you bring some ham and some bread? And he would build these elaborate parties. And everybody thought it was a Brazilian custom to bring food to a party. What he really was doing was celebrating the fact that he had no money and wanted to entertain, so he got people to bring stuff to him. Villa-Lobos, because he was a cellist and because he was a guitarist, I think he wrote best for those two instruments. And in the Bachianas Brasileiras No. 5, he actually combined both of his loves for the cello and the guitar in 2 separate ways. What he wanted to do with the cello ensemble was create the sound of the choro ensemble, the popular music instruments that he grew up with. So he actually said that in that piece, he had 8 cellos imitating the guitar. Many years after he composed it, he was with a friend of his, Olga Prau de Coelho, who was a very good singer and guitarist who self-accompanied. And she said, why did you do this? And he said, well, I did it to imitate the guitar. So she said, why don't you write it for guitar? The next day, he gave her a copy that he had arranged overnight for guitar and singer. So what we have is the guitar imitating 8 cellos that were imitating the guitar, bringing his 2 instrumental loves, guitar and cello, together in one piece.
that sounds like a very basic answer, but growing up, I was told not to love my hair, and not necessarily by my parents because they were the ones who always embraced my curls, but by the peers and those that I surrounded myself by. I grew up in an area that was not very diverse, and so natural hair wasn't as accepted as it is today. But when I finally broke through that barrier and I told myself that I need to feel confident with who I am, I attached more so to my hair. And the things that I love about it are just the way in which my curls fall on my head, the different textures that are within my hair, and the various styles that I can put my hair in. So definitely what makes me feel most confident is my hair.
I would say something about myself that makes me feel confident is making other people smile. I always want to make people laugh and brighten their day, so that is always something that makes me feel confident as well.
One thing about myself that makes me feel super confident is my creative ability. I love coming up with new ideas that have to do with photography and social media and things of that sort. So I love being creative.
I'm very confident in myself because I just ignore what people think about me. I just live my life.
Something that makes me feel confident is my public speaking skills. I love talking to people, I love building relationships, whether that's in an interview or just meeting people on the street. So whatever I can do to just interact with others, I love.
Myself that makes me the most confident, I mean, look at me, all of this body, this face. No, I'm kidding, my sense of humor. And it's taken me a lot of time to become comfortable in my own skin. Like, I'm wearing a dress. It's taken me a long time to be able to walk around like this, and so I'd say my confidence.